Recently, Scott Morrison gave a speech at a Pentecostal Christian conference on the Gold Coast. To Scott Morrison's rhetoric around being called to do God's work as Prime Minister, call into question whether the PM can separate his faith with his political obligations.
Palme.
You're getting all the questions.
No, I don't think that it has proven to be a problem for Scott Morrison. So, first of all, I think that this whole debate over whether or not a Prime Minister or any other person in our midst should be able to have a faith is very strange to me. Some people are religious. In fact, statistically in Australia, more people are religious than aren't. So I think that it is very peculiar, this sort of mocking stance towards the Prime Minister for having a faith. So that's the first thing. I think that that's absolutely fine. The other thing is that he has spoken about how his faith and his politics interact in the past, and said that he doesn't, that, you know, his religion is not a policy. It's not a policy platform. And that's also how he's governed. Now, I can take issue with some of the ways that he's governed, but he certainly has not governed as some kind of religious zealot. And so I think we need to take him at his word on that. But most importantly, I really think that we do have to come back to the question of tolerance. And it's not just about, you know, celebrating and tolerating things that are happening now in society. It's about celebrating and tolerating the fact that we are a diverse society and that people have their personal beliefs, they have ways of living. If they are upstanding citizens in their own right, then what they believe and how they live their lives should be respected and tolerated. And that's what's going to make us a good society.
Do you think there's a particular... Is there a particular discomfort, do you think, in the way it's reported, at least, around him being a Pentecostal?
Yes, I think there is a lot of discomfort because it's seen as an unfamiliar religion, and of course, you know, people are always a little bit uncomfortable when they don't understand a religion, or when it feels like, you know, the suggestion is that maybe it's a bit culty, but really that comes from a lack of understanding the faith, and a lack of understanding the people who practice it, and whether or not they are actually decent human beings or not. So I think we have to take the human being as the main focus here. Does he behave well? You know, does he behave with decency or does he not? That's the question, not what the faith is.
Courtney, you've been talking tonight about the need for acceptance, for understanding, for letting people be who they are. Should we just let the Prime Minister be who he is?
I agree with someone's right to faith. I think the thing about Pentecostal as a religion specifically is that they tend to interfere with other people's rights, and that's when it becomes a problem.
But is there any evidence that Scott Morrison's done that as Prime Minister? He hasn't carried the Pentecostal torch in policy making. It hasn't shaped COVID policy, for example.
I have been living overseas for 8 years, so...
But, Mark Butler, it's true, isn't it? There's no evidence, really, that Scott Morrison, as Prime Minister, has used his faith as to develop policy.
I agree. Look, I think everyone knows Scott Morrison's a man of deep faith. I don't share his particular faith, but I respect it, and I see it as a personal issue for him and his family, provided that he respects the very clear line that we have in Australia between religion and politics. There was nothing in that speech that troubled me that he'd crossed that line, and I haven't seen him do that beforehand either. So I think it's really a matter for him personally, and I respect that.
Bridget?
Yeah, look, I'm a person of faith as well. We're a nation of many faiths. We're a nation of many people without a faith. I think the live and let live sort of code of ethics that Australians sort of bring to life needs to be really... I've been very surprised at the overreaction to the fact that the PM is a Christian. Well,
what do you think it is?
Everybody knew that prior to the election. Like, and Western Sydney voted for the PM as a man of faith, even though they didn't share his particular brand of faith. And so there's a lot of people that want freedom of religion in this country. The last time I checked, we're a liberal democracy. It's something we need to be proud of. And it goes back, I think, to that respect and tolerance piece that we were talking about earlier. I'm proud to serve in a government with many people of the Christian faith. I mean, this whole country was built on Judeo-Christian values.
What do you think it is that seems to spark such interest around this particular Prime Minister's faith? Because there's been plenty of faith, just hasn't seemed to generate as much fascination.
Not an Anglican or a Catholic.
So is that the issue?
I do think it is. It's not a traditional faith. You know, it's...
So wait until you have the first sort of Muslim or, you know, any
Correct,
other religion.
Right?
I think that the broader point here for me is obviously the Prime Minister is perfectly entitled to his beliefs. I think most Australians will understand that. There may be some degree of curiosity. But broadly speaking, this is a very tolerant and accepting society. But what I'd be interested in, and I think a lot of others would as well, is how does his religion frame his worldview, his morality? And that's not something, that's not from a critical position, but that's something we really want to know out of our politicians. And to come full circle to where we began, I think there are a number of moral positions that Australia isn't taking. The quarantine system is one of them, seeing them as sort of a humanitarian imperative in this global crisis. There are other things, I mean, waiving intellectual property rights on COVID-related technologies. This is a debate at the WTO. You don't have to be Christian or any other particular denomination. You might have none. But there is a question about morality here at stake. And I think I'd rather drive the conversation about what are the Prime Minister's morals and how are they driving his worldview and his policy directions. And that's where I'd like the conversation to go.